Usually, when we picture a geopolitical battlefield, there's this underlying expectation of, you know, geography,
Right.
physical space.
Right, yeah. Like a tangible location.
Exactly. You picture a trench line cutting through a field or, I don't know, a fortified border, maybe a naval choke point.
You can point to a map and say, well, there it is. That's where the line is drawn.
Yeah, it's measurable in miles and physical logistics.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you step into the world of modern information warfare, and suddenly that physical map is, well, it's completely useless.
Oh, totally. The strategic landscape we are operating in today is essentially invisible.
Right. The decisive terrain isn't made of earth and water anymore. It's made of code.
Which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're unpacking some really fascinating 2026 writings from the Netizen blog.
Yeah, by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
Right. And the central thesis of his work just fundamentally rewires how we need to understand conflict.
It really does. It's wild.
The primary battlefield for global geopolitical warfare has migrated entirely. It is algorithmic now.
It's happening right on the screen in front of you, like right now.
Exactly.
Every single time you open YouTube or, swipe through TikTok or check your Instagram reels, you are stepping onto a highly contested, highly weaponized geopolitical battlefield.
And your attention, quite literally, is the ultimate prize.
So today, our mission is to, open up the hood. We are going to examine how YouTube transformed into a strategic domain.
We'll be dissecting the hidden mathematical mechanics of these recommendation algorithms, right?
And then revealing how state actors use these platforms in this sort of synchronized sequence to wage what is called cognitive warfare.
But before we really get into the machinery of these algorithms, we need to establish a really important analytical baseline for this discussion.
Yes, absolutely. We need to be clear about what we are doing here.
Right, because Bhagat's writings analyze real-world events. He talks about the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel-Gaza war.
For sensitive, ongoing conflicts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he looks at the digital operations of state actors, the U.S., China, Russia, Iran. So we need to make it incredibly clear to you listening. Our analysis here is strictly mechanical. We are not taking sides.
No sides at all. We aren't endorsing any political viewpoints or validating any state's claims here.
We are just looking at the data exactly as the machine does.
Yeah.
Because in algorithmic warfare, the machine does not care about truth or ethics.
It doesn't know right from wrong.
Right. It only parses data and engagement signals. So to understand how these digital weapons work, we are examining the machinery of the messaging entirely separate from the political message itself.
We are looking at the pipes, not the water flowing through them.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so let's start with the largest pipe in the ecosystem, right? YouTube.
Oh, yeah. The heavyweight.
I mean, think back to 2005. YouTube was this quirky, sort of disorganized archive.
It was literally cat videos.
Cat videos, skateboarding fails, amateur guitar covers, just grainy footage of people's pets.
Yeah, it was very innocent. But now we're looking at 2026 numbers in Bhagat's blog, and it boasts over 2.7 billion monthly active users.
2.7 billion. That is staggering.
It operates as a narrative engine that completely eclipses traditional global television networks.
In terms of speed, personalization, everything.
Yeah, and the objective on this platform for these actors is cognitive warfare.
Okay, so let's define that for the listener. What exactly is cognitive warfare in this context?
So cognitive warfare is the strategic effort to shape how entire populations perceive reality.
Like fundamentally altering their worldview.
Exactly. It moves way beyond destroying an enemy's physical military capability. It targets the sociocultural foundation of the adversary.
Because if you can alter a population's perception of a conflict,
you alter their political will.
Wow. Okay, so why is video the apex delivery mechanism for this?
Because it bypasses the critical analytical filters we use when reading text.
Right. Like if I read a 5,000-word policy brief on a geopolitical crisis, I can remain pretty detached.
Yeah, you're parsing syntax, you're evaluating arguments logically.
The video forces a physiological response.
It does. It immerses the viewer emotionally. Bhagat breaks down the anatomy of these 10-minute documentary-style conflict videos, and it's fascinating.
What are they doing in these videos?
Well, it isn't just presenting data. They layer high-resolution satellite imagery with, raw handheld smartphone footage right from a combat zone.
Making it feel incredibly immediate and real.
Right. Then they splice in eyewitness testimony, add this synthesized, driving musical score, and they literally pace the visual cuts to manipulate your heart rate.
Wait, they cut the video specifically to mess with your heart rate?
Absolutely. The pacing builds tension, and the viewer experiences this parasocial connection with the narrator.
So mirror neurons in the brain are firing when seeing the distress of individuals on screen.
Exactly. It creates an experience, not just information.
And once a viewer feels that emotional resonance, whether it taps into a pre-existing sense of heroism or victimhood,
Or just pure outrage, honestly.
right, outrage is huge. Once that narrative solidifies at the scale of millions of viewers simultaneously, you are reshaping public opinion across entire nations.
And that downstream effect changes actual policy. It literally dictates whether a country imposes economic sanctions or blocks military aid packages.
Pagat notes that narratives regarding sanctions and global crises now propagate across YouTube faster than diplomatic corps can even draft their official statements.
The statecraft apparatus is fundamentally too slow to compete with the velocity of the algorithm.
That is wild. You know, in traditional warfare, the decisive terrain was a physical choke point.
Right, the mountain pass.
Exactly. If you controlled the mountain pass or the deepwater port, you controlled the flow of the war. Today, that decisive terrain is the recommendation sidebar on your screen.
Whoever controls the sidebar controls the reality of the viewer.
But to understand how a state actor captures that sidebar, we have to actually open up the hood of the machine making those decisions, the YouTube algorithm itself.
And the scary reality of YouTube is that user agency is, well, it's largely an illusion.
An illusion. How so?
Over 70% of total watch time on the platform is driven entirely by algorithmic recommendations.
Wait, 70%? That implies most people aren't even searching for what they watch.
They aren't. The vast majority of the time, users are not executing deliberate searches or specifically clicking on their subscription feeds.
They're just consuming whatever the machine predicts they want to consume.
Exactly. And that prediction operates through a massive multi-stage pipeline processing billions of variables in milliseconds.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that pipeline, because I think people just assume it's magic. How does a machine take a library of billions of videos and mathematically narrow it down to the 5 specific thumbnails on my homepage?
Right. So the first phase is called candidate generation. The system has to instantly shrink the total corpus of billions of videos down to a few hundred viable options for your specific profile.
And how does it do that instantly?
It achieves this using 2 primary mechanisms. The first is collaborative filtering.
Okay, what is collaborative filtering?
It relies on matrix factorization. Basically, the algorithm maps you and millions of other users in this massive behavioral matrix.
Okay, so it groups people together based on behavior.
Right. If your viewing history overlaps, say, 85% with thousands of other users, you form a cluster.
I see.
The machine will instantly pull videos that those other users just watched and add them to your candidate pool.
So it assumes that because we like the same 85 videos in the past, I will just automatically like the 86th video they just clicked on.
Correct. It's betting on the cluster's shared behavior.
That makes sense. And what's the second mechanism?
The second is content embeddings. The AI maps the inherent qualities of a video, its metadata, audio transcript, and visual object recognition data into a high-dimensional mathematical vector space.
Whoa, okay, vector space. So it's turning a video into a coordinate.
Exactly. If a video's coordinate in that vector space closely aligns with the coordinates of topics you frequently engage with, it gets pulled into the candidate pool.
Okay, so now we have a few hundred candidates that the system thinks I might like. But they still have to be ordered, right? Which one is at the very top?
That is the ranking and scoring phase. The algorithm evaluates those candidates and assigns each one a predicted satisfaction score.
Let's pause on that word, satisfaction. Because in the early days of YouTube, the optimization metric was just purely watch time, right? Just keep the user on the site.
But literally just clocking minutes. But Pagat's analysis highlights this shift in the mid-2020s to what they call satisfaction-weighted discovery.
So what specific mathematical signals tell a machine that a human is quote-unquote satisfied?
The model weights 4 primary pillars. The first is click-through rate, or CTR. When the system presents a thumbnail, what percentage of the time does it actually induce a click?
Okay, so just getting them in the door.
Right. Second is the retention curve. Does the user abandon the video at the 10% mark, or do they watch all the way through to the end? High completion is a heavily weighted satisfaction signal.
Obviously, if you watched the whole thing, you probably liked it.
Usually, yes. Third is engagement. That means the density of meaningful comments, the rate of shares, or additions to specific playlists.
And the fourth.
Finally, there is direct survey feedback. Those randomized pop-ups asking a user to rate a video from 1 to 5 stars.
Okay, but if I can challenge the fundamental premise of this optimization for a second,
Go for it.
is satisfaction just a polite, sanitized Silicon Valley term for, like, addiction to emotional outrage?
That is the big question.
Because think about it. If I am scrolling and I see a horrific, raw piece of combat footage from a war zone, my heart rate spikes. My pupils dilate.
Your nervous system is reacting.
Exactly. I stop scrolling because of morbid shock and I watch the whole thing. The algorithm registers a high retention rate. Doesn't it mathematically equate my psychological trauma with a positive user experience?
Yes, that's the dark reality. The algorithm is completely neutral to the semantic meaning of the emotion.
It doesn't know why I'm watching.
It does not possess a moral framework to differentiate between, profound inspiration and paralyzed horror. It only measures the depth of attention.
Wow.
So if intense, polarizing coverage of a conflict yields a steeper retention curve and a higher interaction density than a dry, objective network news report.
The mathematical weights will invariably prioritize the intense coverage,
Exactly. The system is just designed to continuously feed the behavioral loop.
which unintentionally creates the perfect conditions for echo chambers. Because if I engage with outrage, it maps my coordinate closer to outrage content and serves me more of it.
You're training the machine to upset you.
And these echo chambers don't even form through censorship. They form through this subtle, automated amplification of whatever we already resonate with.
It is a totally decentralized ecosystem where narratives compete for visibility based entirely on engagement metrics. And sophisticated state actors have realized this exact vulnerability.
They are actively gaming this satisfaction engine.
Oh, heavily. Government intelligence apparatuses have recognized that YouTube is a prime strategic vector.
Bhagat's writings point to several examples, right? He mentions Russian state-backed media, like RT and Sputnik, Chinese outlets like CGTN, and Iranian networks leveraging the platform.
But the key here is that modern state propaganda rarely looks like old-school broadcasts.
Right. They aren't putting uniformed generals in front of a camera to read a manifesto.
Because traditional propaganda triggers immediate psychological defenses. You know when you're being lectured to.
So what do they do instead?
Modern state operations mimic the aesthetic of independent grassroots journalism. They utilize high production values, dynamic pacing, and charismatic, culturally fluent hosts.
They probably optimize their titles and thumbnails to generate massive click-through rates, just like a regular YouTuber.
Exactly. Furthermore, the strategic objective isn't always persuasion. They don't always need you to believe their side.
Really? Then what's the point?
Often the goal is simply cognitive friction.
Like flooding the zone with contradictory information.
Yes. They produce highly engaging content that subtly questions established facts, or highlights hypocrisies in rival nations, or just presents alternative interpretations of geopolitical events.
So if they can degrade a population's trust in institutional information to the point where the viewer assumes everything is manipulated,
Then they have achieved a strategic victory. Paralysis through confusion is a highly effective outcome in cognitive warfare.
but the architecture of YouTube also enables the exact opposite force, doesn't it? Fagat outlines the rise of open source intelligence, or OSINT, communities.
Yeah, OSINT is fascinating. It represents a massive decentralization of intelligence gathering. It's regular people using the internet to debunk propaganda.
Like during the initial phases of the Russia-Ukraine war, Vagat noted we saw this happen in real time.
We did. A state actor might upload a high-definition video of a tank column, claiming it represents a successful advance in a contested region today.
But within hours, independent OSINT creators use satellite imagery and geolocation to pull that video apart.
They don't just watch the video, they mine it for data.
I read about how they do this. They literally analyze the angle of the shadows cast by the vehicles to calculate the sun's position and determine the precise time of day.
Oh, it goes deeper. They cross-reference the specific silhouette of a radio tower or the curvature of a riverbank in the background with satellite imagery from Google Earth.
So they match crater patterns, they analyze metadata, and they can definitively prove that the footage was actually recorded 3 weeks earlier, hundreds of miles away from the claimed location.
And then they publish their findings back onto YouTube in the form of analytical breakdowns.
And Pagat also notes that human rights investigators increasingly use YouTube as a digital evidence archive to document potential war crimes, like with footage from the Israel-Gaza war.
It creates this bizarre, almost surreal paradox. You have a massive, multi-billion-dollar state intelligence agency trying to seed a narrative.
And on the exact same platform, you have a 22-year-old with a laptop in their bedroom geolocating a tank from a blurry pixel.
And the algorithm treats them both as equals. It just asks who has the better retention curve.
It's the ultimate digital cat and mouse game. Now, YouTube obviously has tried to fight back against the propaganda side of this, right?
They have. They introduced state media labeling to provide context. They utilize demonetization policies to strip revenue from known propaganda networks.
And they deploy AI detection for deepfakes.
But the enforcement is inherently imperfect. At the scale of billions of videos, state actors just adapt by using proxy channels or loosely affiliated influencers. The gray zone between independent commentary and state influence is so blurry.
So YouTube is the place for deep, long-form entrenchment of these narratives. It's where the 40-minute documentary lives.
Right.
But the spark that starts the fire usually happens somewhere much faster. An influence operation rarely starts with a 40-minute commitment.
No, you need extreme velocity to ignite a narrative. You need a different staging ground. And that brings us to TikTok.
Let's talk about TikTok, because Bhagat explains that its underlying philosophy is a radical departure from YouTube.
Completely different. TikTok optimizes almost entirely for rapid momentum and immediate attention capture.
Right.
It relies on this mechanism known as the Tier 1 distribution phase, or what creators call the test pool.
Okay, how does that mathematical gate actually function?
So, when a video is uploaded to TikTok, the algorithm initiates a micro-test. It pushes the video to a highly restricted pool of roughly 200 to 500 viewers.
Okay.
But the critical distinction here is that these viewers are predominantly non-followers.
Wait, so having 10 million followers doesn't guarantee you a million views on your next upload?
No, follower count provides a negligible safety net on TikTok. The algorithm completely bypasses the creator's established social graph to test the raw appeal of the video.
So the system relies on its own immediate analysis.
Exactly. The AI breaks down the video to build a content fingerprint. Computer vision algorithms identify visual objects, military uniforms, specific cityscapes, explosion patterns.
It's scanning everything.
Everything. Natural language processing transcribes the audio, analyzes the on-screen text, and categorizes the semantic tone. Then it maps that fingerprint to a cluster of strangers who have historically engaged with those specific variables.
So the audition begins with these strangers. What are the specific metrics TikTok requires to graduate out of that test pool?
The window is extremely narrow. We're talking often just 1 to 3 hours.
Wow, that is fast.
The primary threshold is the completion rate. Bhagat's analysis indicates a video typically needs to achieve a 70 to 75% completion rate to trigger the next tier of algorithmic distribution.
It has to keep almost everyone hooked until the very end.
Exactly. The system also filters for what it calls qualified views, meaning the user must watch for a minimum threshold, often around 5 seconds.
To ensure the engagement isn't just a slowed scroll, they actually pause to watch.
Right. Additionally, it heavily weights replays. If a viewer watches a 15-second clip on a loop 3 times, the algorithm logs that as an extreme density of interest.
And if the video fails to hit those metrics with those initial 500 strangers in that 1-hour window,
it lands in what the community refers to as 200-view jail. The algorithm fundamentally halts distribution. It's dead.
Phagat calls this content Darwinism. TikTok has zero legacy bias. The purest, most engaging piece of media wins, regardless of the creator's status.
It is brutal, but incredibly efficient.
But if we extrapolate this to geopolitical strategy, TikTok's test pool mechanism provides state actors with an insane tool.
It facilitates real-time A/B testing at a global scale.
Think about that. A coordinated influence operation can generate 10 variations of a specific political narrative.
They could alter the first 3 seconds of the hook, change the synthesized voiceover from, say, authoritative to empathetic, and swap out the background music.
And they just upload all 10 variations simultaneously into different test pools?
Yep. Within a 3-hour window, the algorithm processes the physiological reactions of thousands of strangers and identifies the exact permutation that maximizes the completion rate.
And once the algorithm flags a winner, it just scales it globally. It injects that optimized narrative into millions of feeds before traditional news networks have even verified the original event.
It's staggering speed.
But it makes me wonder, if TikTok strips away legacy bias and tests everyone equally, doesn't that make it the most democratic platform ever built? Or does fastest to trigger an emotion just mean it's the most easily weaponized?
That is the paradox.
Yeah.
It is perfectly democratic, which is exactly why it's so easily weaponized.
Because outrage wins the vote every time.
Right. But velocity has a limitation. A narrative that relies purely on algorithmic distribution to strangers lacks social friction. It is consumed and forgotten
Real
quickly.
quick, that's a flash in the pan.
Exactly. For an influence operation to truly take root, sometimes you want a narrative to spread through trusted social circles rather than strangers.
You need the credibility that only comes from social validation. Which brings us to Instagram Reels.
Yes. On the surface, the UI of Reels looks identical to TikTok. It's a vertical short-form video feed. It also utilizes small test audiences, which Instagram categorizes as trial reels.
But the core engagement metric is entirely different, isn't it?
Fundamentally different. It requires an understanding of graph network theory.
Okay, unpack that for us.
So TikTok evaluates isolation metrics completion and replays by an individual user in a vacuum. Instagram's algorithm, however, places immense weight on network edge interactions.
And in plain English, that means?
Direct message shares, the DM.
Ah, okay. Sending a DM requires a fundamentally different psychological calculation than just tapping a heart icon.
Right. When you hit like, you are interacting with the machine. When you send a video via DM to a friend, you are interacting with a human.
You are vouching for that piece of media.
Yes. In graph network terms, a DM reinforces the edge between two user nodes. The algorithm interprets a DM as an incredibly high-trust signal.
When you share a video, you attach your personal social capital to it. It turns the viewer into a distributor.
Exactly. And it leverages the trust you have built with your friend over, say, 10 years to bypass their critical filters.
Oh, that makes so much sense, because if my friend sees a geopolitical claim from a random account on a feed, they might be skeptical. But if I DM it to them, they assume I have vetted it.
And the algorithm tracks this contagion. TikTok's expansion is explosive but shallow. Instagram's algorithmic waves are softer, but they achieve deep penetration into pre-existing social graphs.
It moves the narrative from the public algorithmic square into the encrypted private group chat.
Vagat also notes that Instagram heavily penalizes recycled content bearing TikTok watermarks.
So they force operators to generate native content that respects the specific social mechanics of their platform. If a geopolitical narrative on TikTok is a wildfire spreading wildly across an open plain, a narrative on Instagram Reels is a contagious whisper moving from ear to ear through a crowded room.
That is a perfect analogy. One relies on speed, the other relies on relationships.
But this short-form dominance clearly forces YouTube to adapt. How does the king of long-form compete in a short-form war?
YouTube was forced to engineer a bridge, and that resulted in YouTube Shorts.
Which by 2026 generates over 200 billion daily views.
It's massive.
Yeah.
But the algorithmic architecture of Shorts doesn't simply replicate TikTok's stranger-only test pool.
Right. Vagat says it uses an explore and exploit pipeline. How does that work?
The initial seed audience for a YouTube Short, the Explore phase, is a calculated blend. It pushes the content to a segment of the creator's existing subscribers, but it also matches the video to non-subscribers based on complex interest nodes.
Interest nodes, how are those defined?
They are highly specific behavioral clusters. Let's say your viewing history indicates heavy engagement with drone technology, military logistics, and international relations theory. The matrix factorization models place you in a precise geopolitical interest node. When a new short aligns with that content fingerprint, the algorithm exploits that node, pushing the video to you because your historical data suggests a high probability of engagement.
And the primary metric here isn't just completion rate, like on TikTok. Vagat identifies the critical signal as viewed versus swiped away.
Yes, because YouTube is integrating short form into a massive long-form ecosystem. Their ultimate goal is to maximize total watch time across the entire platform.
They don't just want you trapped in a short-form loop.
Exactly. They want to transition the user into deep, sustained viewing. This is the foundation of the bridge effect.
Okay, this is the most critical mechanical handoff in cognitive warfare right here.
Walk us through it.
When a viewer stops scrolling and engages with a 15-second geopolitical short that hits their specific interest node, the algorithm logs that interaction. And the very next recommendation it queues up isn't just another short. It converts that short-form virality into long-form subscription. It recommends a highly produced 40-minute documentary from that same channel.
It mathematically converts a micro moment of engagement into deep ideological entrenchment.
Wait, so if TikTok is just a fleeting emotional reaction, isn't YouTube Shorts actually more dangerous?
In a way, yes.
Because it's not just giving you a quick hit of propaganda, it's actively handing you the map to a 10-hour rabbit hole. A
Yeah.
15-second clip can't rewrite your political philosophy, but it acts as the hook.
And that's why modern media operators don't choose between these platforms. They don't just pick TikTok or YouTube.
They use all of them.
Exactly. They map the mechanical strengths of each algorithm and chain them together into a coordinated sequence. This brings us to Bhagat Synthesis, the hybrid warfare playbook of 2026.
Let's trace the exact flow of data through that playbook. Phase 1.
Phase 1 leverages TikTok. An operation generates a high-energy hook regarding a geopolitical conflict. They test multiple variations against the Tier 1 test pools to find what goes viral.
They use TikTok to strip away the noise and find the precise emotional trigger.
Right. Then, Phase 2 transitions to Instagram Reels. They extract the successful clip from TikTok, reformat it, and deploy it to target the graph network.
They optimize it to induce DM shares, spreading it through personal networks to bypass skepticism.
Exactly. Then Phase 3 initiates the bridge effect on YouTube Shorts. They deploy the socially reinforced narrative to aggressively target specific interest nodes.
And when users engage with the short, the viewed versus swiped away metric triggers the algorithm to funnel viewers into the 40-minute documentaries on YouTube to fully entrench the narrative. It's literally a military combined arms operation. TikTok is the air support testing the defenses, Instagram Reels is the infantry moving through the social networks, and YouTube is the occupying force that rewrites the history books.
That's a chilling but entirely accurate way to frame it. The real battle is who masters the handoff between platforms.
But Bhagat's final analysis introduces a variable that supercharges this entire sequence, the coming AI swarm.
Right. By 2026, the future of this involves AI-accelerated narrative warfare. Generative AI fundamentally breaks the traditional bottleneck of content production.
They are using AI to create realistic synthetic videos, voice clones, and completely fabricated battle scenes.
It shifts propaganda from a single, centralized broadcast into a decentralized swarm of micromessages.
Instead of producing one polished video, an AI model can autonomously generate 10,000 micromessages. Thousands of short clips subconsciously building a narrative ecosystem.
Exactly. It can slightly alter the lighting to make a political figure appear more menacing in one iteration and more exhausted in another. It alters the syntax to appeal to different demographic interest nodes simultaneously,
And the algorithm tests all 10,000 variations in real time.
instantly promoting the iterations that maximize retention and DM shares. The viewer never recognizes they are the target of an operation because no single video looks like traditional state media.
In modern hybrid conflict, the outcome of wars might be shaped by this algorithmic handoff long before the first actual physical shot is fired.
The machine learns exactly which sequence of pixels and audio frequencies will rewire the perception of the population.
Wow. We have covered an incredibly complex architecture today. You, the listener, have essentially looked behind the curtain of the digital world.
Your home feed really is the front line of modern geopolitics.
We've seen how TikTok sparks the fire, how Reels spreads it through friends, and how YouTube builds an ideology around it. All of it accelerated by an autonomous AI swarm generating synthetic realities.
And the crucial takeaway here is to recognize your own functional role within this system. Every time you pause a video or allow it to replay or share it or swipe away, you are providing the training data for these global weapons.
Your attention is the ammunition. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on everything we discussed today. We've spent all this time talking about how these algorithms learn to predict exactly what will satisfy you or outrage you.
Right.
But as AI gets better at generating content specifically tailored to your precise psychological profile, at what point does the algorithm stop merely predicting what you want to see and start successfully predicting what you want to believe?
That is a terrifying thought.
If a machine knows exactly which 15-second clip will change your worldview, who is really in control of your reality? Something to explore on your own. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.